Have you ever wondered why some of the most spiritually gifted and enlightened people seem to struggle in their school life? While others race through exams and bask in awards, the chosen ones often find themselves misunderstood, labeled as slow, or even written off as failures. But here's the truth. What looks like weakness in the classroom is often a hidden sign of higher intelligence, a type of brilliance that goes beyond textbooks and standardized tests. Now think about it. If true wisdom could be measured by a GPA or your annual academic report, then the world's greatest visionaries, prophets, and spiritual leaders would all have straight A's. But history shows us something completely different. Some of the most remarkable minds never fit inside the narrow box of traditional education. And maybe, just maybe, that's the very thing that set them apart. So let me ask you, did you ever feel out of place in school? Did you find yourself questioning why certain things were taught the way they were? Or why memorizing endless facts felt meaningless to your soul? If so, then what you experienced was not a flaw. It was the earliest sign that you were never meant to walk an ordinary path. This video will uncover the hidden reasons why chosen ones often struggle in school, not because they lack brilliance, but because their brilliance refuses to be confined. By the end, you'll see that every frustration you faced in a classroom was preparing you for a much greater destiny. And before we dive deeper, I want you to participate right now. If this message already resonates with you, drop "I am the chosen" in the comments. Doing so will not only affirm your journey, but also help you connect with others who share this path. You'll see that you were never alone in this struggle. Let's get started. Almost in everyone's life, school is often treated as the ultimate measure of success. From the time we're young, we're told that grades define our intelligence, diplomas validate our worth, and academic achievement guarantees a brighter future. But chosen ones always sensed that something about this equation was flawed. Deep inside, they knew their destiny couldn't be captured by a letter on a report card. For chosen ones, school often felt like wearing shoes 2 sizes too small. No matter how hard they tried to conform, the system never fit. They weren't built to follow rigid rules or measure themselves against standardized tests. Instead, their souls were crafted for something far more expansive, something that couldn't be taught in a classroom or scored with red ink on paper. Many of them struggled with feelings of failure, believing that low grades or critical teachers meant they weren't smart enough. But what looked like struggle was actually preparation. The friction they felt was life's way of shaping them for a unique path. While others chased trophies, scholarships, and validation, chosen ones were being silently molded for roles of leadership, creativity, and spiritual awakening. The truth is, chosen ones carry an inner calling that no school could ever prepare them for. Their brilliance doesn't show up in memorizing dates or equations. It shines through in their ability to question, to create, to imagine, and to feel the unseen dimensions of reality. They are destined to leave an impact so much greater than a perfect transcript ever could. And this is where their story flips. What society mislabels as weakness often becomes the chosen one's greatest strength. Not fitting in pushes them to find their own path. Struggling in rigid systems forces them to discover self-guided wisdom. Being overlooked in classrooms trains them to trust their inner voice more than outside approval. So if you've ever carried the weight of believing you failed in school, let this sink in. You were never meant to succeed there. You were meant to rise beyond it. Your destiny was never about test scores. It was about shaping a life that no exam could ever measure. When you look back, every frustrating class, every misunderstood teacher, every moment you felt less than was actually evidence of your greater calling. You weren't behind. You were being prepared. And that's why, when chosen ones finally step into their true path, They often outshined everyone who once looked down on them. Their light was never meant to flicker in a classroom. It was meant to illuminate the world. One of the most misunderstood traits of chosen ones in school was their tendency to drift off into daydreams. Teachers saw it as a distraction. Parents called it lack of focus. But in reality, daydreaming was a portal, a sign of minds that could not be confined by the rigid walls of the classroom. While other students copied notes word for word or followed lessons step by step, chosen ones were busy exploring worlds within their imagination. Their minds would wander far beyond the textbook, envisioning possibilities, connecting ideas, and entertaining questions that no curriculum dared to ask. What looked like zoning out was actually deep engagement, but on a frequency higher than most people could see. Daydreaming was never laziness. It was creativity in action. Chosen ones could visualize future scenarios, imagine entire universes, or replay spiritual concepts until they made sense on a soul-deep level. Their inner world was far richer than the worksheets in front of them. But because traditional education rewards obedience and repetition, this extraordinary gift was seen as a flaw. And yet, some of the world's greatest thinkers and innovators were daydreamers. Albert Einstein himself admitted that imagination mattered more to him than knowledge. For chosen ones, this ability to slip into the unknown, to lose themselves in possibilities, is what sets them apart. It is the very reason they can see solutions others miss, or create art, ideas, and visions that shift the world. Unfortunately, schools are rarely designed to nurture imagination. Instead of encouraging students to dream, they often demand they pay attention and stay on task. For chosen ones, that environment feels suffocating. Their gift is not in parroting back information, but in expanding it, reshaping it into something bigger, more meaningful, and more alive. If you've ever been scolded for staring out the window or caught not listening in class, realize this: you weren't failing. You were training your mind to step into the extraordinary. That daydreaming you were punished for was a rehearsal for the visions you would later bring into reality. So the next time you remember drifting off in school, don't see it as wasted time. See it as proof that you were never ordinary. You were tapping into dimensions of thought that most people never reach, and that ability is not a weakness. It is one of your greatest gifts. Another reason chosen ones struggled in school was their inability to tolerate meaningless work. Traditional education often asks students to memorize dates, repeat formulas, or write essays on topics that hold no real connection to their lives. For most students, this is simply part of the process. But for chosen ones, it feels unbearable. That's because chosen ones have an intrinsic need for purpose. Every action, every effort, must feel connected to something meaningful. Their souls resist empty repetition because they intuitively know that true learning comes from curiosity, exploration, and discovery. For them, school often felt like being trapped in a system designed to crush creativity and replace it with compliance. When faced with assignments that lacked depth, chosen ones either struggled to complete them or refused altogether. Teachers saw this as laziness or lack of discipline, but it was really something else. Their souls rejecting what didn't align with their higher calling. They couldn't bring themselves to pour energy into tasks that carried no significance. Yet, when given freedom to pursue subjects they truly cared about, these same individuals would excel beyond expectation. A chosen one who failed math might spend hours passionately exploring philosophy. One who ignored history homework might devour books about spirituality or consciousness. Their brilliance showed not when they were forced into boxes, but when they were set free. This resistance to meaningless tasks often created conflict in classrooms, but in hindsight, it was a form of protection. It preserved their energy for the paths that actually mattered. Imagine if they had been able to numb themselves into compliance. They might have lost the very fire that makes them unique. So if you ever found yourself staring at an assignment and wondering, what's the point of this? Know that this was your inner wisdom speaking. That voice inside wasn't laziness, it was guidance. It was telling you that your purpose is too big to waste on empty exercises. The world needs people who resist meaningless work, because those are the very people who later go on to create meaningful change. The traditional school system is built on a one-size-fits-all approach. Students are expected to absorb information in straight lines. Memorize, repeat, regurgitate, and then move on. It's a formula that works for many. But for chosen ones, that rigid method often feels impossible, not because they're incapable, but because their minds simply don't work that way. Chosen ones are non-linear learners. Instead of moving step by step, they leap. They see patterns where others see disconnected facts. They connect history with spirituality, science with philosophy, and personal experience with universal truths. They don't just study the material, they transform it, weaving it into something deeper and more meaningful. In a classroom, this unique learning style can appear chaotic. While their peers write neat notes, chosen ones might doodle, ask questions that seem off-topic, or get lost in thought while making hidden connections. Teachers sometimes mistake this for distraction, but in truth, their minds are operating on a higher wavelength. The problem is that schools rarely measure this kind of intelligence. Standardized tests don't reward the ability to see the big picture or to connect ideas across subjects. They reward memorization and repetition. And because chosen ones process information differently, their brilliance often goes unnoticed. They might score lower on tests, even though they actually understand the material in a way that goes far beyond surface knowledge. But when chosen ones are given freedom, their learning flourishes. They thrive in spaces where they can explore topics deeply, rather than skim across the surface. They excel when they're allowed to ask why and pursue questions that matter to them. In those moments, their so-called struggle with academics disappears, revealing profound wisdom that no test could ever capture. This is why chosen ones often come alive outside the classroom. They might absorb lessons through nature, through observation of people, through personal experiences, or through deep contemplation. They learn not by memorizing what others say, but by discovering truths on their own. Their education is self-guided, and it makes them wiser than many who follow the rules perfectly. So if you ever felt like you didn't learn the way others did, remember this. You weren't broken. You weren't behind. You were simply designed with a different operating system. A system built not for conformity, but for discovery. The world doesn't just need people who can memorize facts. It needs people who can connect the dots others don't even see. And that is exactly the kind of intelligence chosen ones carry. From the very beginning, chosen ones experience life with a depth that sets them apart. While other children may laugh and play without a care, chosen ones often feel the weight of emotions they can't even explain. They pick up on sadness in others, notice tension in a room, and reflect on questions that most kids wouldn't even think to ask. This emotional depth, though beautiful, makes school a challenging place. The classroom is not built for children who process emotions on a soul level. It's built for efficiency rules, schedules, tests, and assignments. Chosen ones often struggle because their hearts are busy processing things their teachers can't see. Imagine being a child who feels the heartbreak of a classmate being bullied as though it were your own, or sitting in class, unable to focus because you can sense the teacher's stress. Chosen ones live in that reality. Their heightened emotional awareness makes them sensitive to every energy around them, and the structured environment of school can feel overwhelming. This depth also makes them appear older than their peers. They might ask profound questions, reflect on life's meaning, or even worry about things far beyond their age. Teachers and parents often don't know how to handle this. Instead of being celebrated for their wisdom, they're told to lighten up or just focus on schoolwork. The irony is that this emotional intensity, which makes academics harder, is the very thing that equips chosen ones for their true purpose. Because they feel so deeply, they develop compassion, empathy, and understanding that others may never reach. These qualities are invisible on a report card, but invaluable in the real world. Unfortunately, in school, emotional depth is often mistaken for weakness. Sensitive children are sometimes labeled as shy, anxious, or too soft. But in truth, sensitivity is strength in its purest form. It means chosen ones are in tune with life itself, able to sense layers of reality that others ignore. Looking back, those who felt too deeply in childhood often become the adults who heal, guide, and inspire others. Their struggles in school were not signs of failure. They were signs that they were processing life on a frequency most people never touch. If you ever felt out of place because you cared too much, cried too easily, or thought too deeply, remember this. Your emotional depth was never a weakness. It was evidence of your higher awareness. The world doesn't need more numb, detached individuals. It needs people like you who feel, who care, and who see life with extraordinary depth. While most students depend entirely on the education system to teach them, chosen ones often become their own teachers. Even if they struggled in class, outside those walls they were absorbing knowledge in ways few people realized. Some turned to books, devouring philosophy, spirituality, or creative works that spoke to their soul. Others learned from life itself, observing people, reflecting on experiences, and drawing wisdom from situations no textbook could explain. Many found themselves guided by intuition, inner visions, or even spiritual practices that unlocked truths far beyond what the classroom offered. This self-education wasn't just a hobby, it was survival. Because chosen ones rarely felt nourished by traditional learning, they instinctively sought knowledge that resonated with their higher purpose. Where their peers memorized facts for exams, chosen ones searched for meaning. They weren't content with knowing what happened, they wanted to know why it mattered. The result? They often grew up carrying wisdom far beyond their years. While others could solve equations, chosen ones could solve life's puzzles. While classmates worried about fitting in, chosen ones contemplated their role in the universe. This inner wisdom couldn't be measured in grades, but it shaped them into visionaries. Of course, this path was not easy. Self-education meant walking alone much of the time. It meant being misunderstood by peers who didn't share the same hunger for truth. It meant choosing depth over popularity, wisdom over conformity. But in the end, it gave chosen ones something priceless: independence of thought. And here's the irony. Many of the most influential people in history were self-educated. They didn't wait for a system to validate them. They learned on their own, driven by passion, curiosity, and purpose. Chosen ones follow the same path. So, if you ever found yourself spending hours researching a topic you loved while ignoring homework, that wasn't rebellion. That was your soul guiding you toward your true education. If you ever trusted your intuition more than your teacher's instructions, that wasn't arrogance. That was your higher wisdom speaking. Chosen ones carry the rare ability to teach themselves, to pull knowledge from within, and to align it with universal truths. That is why, even if they stumble in classrooms, they eventually surpass many who excelled there. Because the greatest education chosen ones receive is not handed to them by a school. It is discovered within themselves. So, let me leave you with this. Stop seeing your school struggles as scars. See them as signs. Signs that you are being prepared for something far greater than the walls of a classroom. Signs that you carry gifts the system could never measure. Signs that your destiny has always been extraordinary. The world doesn't remember who got the highest GPA in your graduating class, but it never forgets the ones who dared to be different. The ones who challenged the system, dreamed bigger, and walked their own path. And that is exactly who you are. If these words resonate with your soul, I want you to affirm it right now in the comments. Type, "I was never meant to fit in, I was meant to rise beyond," so that the world, the universe, and even your own spirit knows that you're embracing your calling. And while you're here, make sure you subscribe to this channel, because together we're building a space where chosen ones can finally feel understood. Your school years did not define you. They refined you. They carved you into someone who sees deeper, feels stronger, and thinks freer. And from this moment forward, you don't need the validation of grades, teachers, or systems. You carry the only validation that matters: the truth of who you are. Remember this always. You were never failing the system. The system was failing you. And your destiny is far greater than anything they ever tried to measure. Stay true to your path, because the best chapters of your story are still ahead.